Pony Fantasy V, Exodus of the Void, by G.M. Blackjack. Chapter 13, Shipbuilding. As the Celestia disappeared over the horizon, Lyra cracked her hooves. "Let's get busy." Twilight nodded. "We are going to need a lot of wood and large quantities of blueprint paper." "I bet the minister has it," Lyra offered. "I suppose he does have access to the secondary storehouses. They should have survived the explosion." "Great! Let's go ask him." The minister was less than thrilled about their request. "You want me to hand over a large quantity of wood and blueprint paper? Why?" "Well, we need to cross the desert of shifting sands, and we think we have a way to do it," Twilight said. The minister's jaw dropped. "What? Cross the desert of shifting sands? Is that a good use of royal resources? We're in the middle of a crisis. All our mills aren't working. The wood in the storehouses is all we have left, and you're asking for enough to build an entire house out of." "But," Lyra said, tapping her hooves together, "we have to go save the Earth Crystal." The minister glared at her. "Okay, maybe I also want to see the Lost City and find proof that humans actually existed." Twilight face hooved. "I can assure you, Minister, that the Fire Crystal itself instructed us to go to Cadenza. I am not simply trying to help my daughter substantiate her ridiculous theories." "Hey, they're legitimate theories! The Library of Ancients had mention of humans. It also had mention of a crystal of light and ether," Twilight pointed out. "And we know those don't exist." "But," Twilight sighed. "Okay, maybe humans did exist in ancient times. That still has nothing to do with why we need to cross the desert." "Minister, surely you can..." "No." "What?" "I said no," the minister repeated, frowning. "We need these resources too much in this time of crisis. Don't you understand that if the Earth Crystal is destroyed, there won't be any planet left to live on?" The minister glared. "I find that hard to believe. Fire, water, and air still exist, just without their substance. I expect that if the Earth Crystal shatters, all that will happen is the ground will get less solid and turn into nothing but sand. An unfounded theory from someone who calls themselves a scientist," the minister noted. Twilight twitched. "Fine then, we'll go find our wood elsewhere." She stormed off in a huff, Lyra trotting close behind her. "So, when are we going to bust into the warehouse and steal it?" Twilight stopped dead in her tracks. "What, Lyra? What on earth are you thinking?" "Well, we need the wood. I can chop down trees with my magic, and I can purchase some blueprint paper. It will just take a lot longer." She frowned. "Though, I suppose this means we could work on the edge of the desert, saving us the problem of dragging the sand ship several miles across regular land. I thought I was going to have to create a tread system." Lyra frowned. "Oh, come on. I was kinda getting used to the idea of stealing some wood." The next day, mother and daughter were hard at work in the sweltering heat of the shifting sand delta. Lyra hammered a nail into a plank of wood with her magic. "So, I hear that Pinky knows water magic. Do you think you could..." "No," Twilight said, levitating another plank into place. "I'm not a blue mage, nor do I know any water magic." "Any way to cure thirst?" Lyra said, downing the last of her canteen and frowning. "Not unless you can get me a bucket of ice-cold water. Then I could do something." Lyra eagerly stood up and wagged her tail. "I shall venture forth into the woods and find you a bucket of ice-cold water." She galloped off before Twilight could say anything, leaving a trail of dust. Twilight rolled her eyes. Sometimes Lyra was so scatterbrained. Already, Lyra was out of the desert, running through the grasslands to the mountainside river. Normally, this might have been slightly concerning, a mountain river being so close to an arid desert. But the rapid scenery change was standard for the land of Cadenza. And it just so happened that as she came to the river, she noticed she had elected not to bring a bucket. "Aw, shoot," Lyra grumbled, looking around for something to carry the water with. Then she realized she could just dunk her head underwater and probably get the same cooling effect. Lyra discovered that mountain rivers were really cold. She jerked her head out of the babbling waters and shivered. That was most effective. She turned, ready to trot back to the desert, but something caught her eye. There was a cave entrance to her right, its darkness calling ominously to her. Lyra grinned. Adventure awaits! She lit her horn to give herself light, and entered the cavern. She searched around, looking for treasures. She found nothing. Nothing at all. After about 15 minutes of searching, she decided to give up. The cavern was just a cavern. She turned toward the entrance, taking the first few steps out when she heard a noise behind her. Rotating back towards the cave, she saw the most adorable gray squirrel she had ever seen. "Aw, aren't you so cute?" she said, cuddling the squirrel up. "I could just..." Before she could finish the thought, she noticed that the cuddly squirrel was as metallic as a sword. The fur was cutting into her flesh. She dropped the creature suddenly, just as it bore its gigantic teeth. "Ah! Monster!" Lyra shouted, blasting it with a rather pathetic missile spell. The creature fell backwards. Lyra felt very proud of herself for vanquishing the horrible beast. And then she watched as the creature stood up and began to shudder. A smaller, gray, fluffy thing began to form on its back, growing ever larger right before her eyes. Within seconds, it turned into another gray squirrel and popped off the first. Lyra didn't stick around when those two creatures started generating lumps on them as well. She ran straight out of the cavern, over the grasslands, and back into the desert. "You forgot the bucket," Twilight observed as she came back. "I am not going back, you go this time!" Lyra shouted. Twilight was a bit taken aback. "Okay, then. See you in a few minutes." She slowly walked away. Lyra was extremely annoyed when Twilight came back with roasted metallic squirrel for dinner. "I hate Crescent," Rainbow Dash growled, punching her hooves into the pub counter. "This little town doesn't give two flying feathers about us." A random stallion behind her lit up. "Oh, that's right. You're the mayor whose ship got sucked through the whirlpool. Ha! Comedy gold." "Can I bolt him, please?" Rainbow Dash asked Applejack. "Go right ahead," the orange mare muttered, not really paying attention to the question, because she was focusing on a piano standing in the room before her. She couldn't tear her gaze off it. "Darling, just play it already," Rarity urged. "Yeah," Pinky said. "How can you get better if you don't play when the scene is on us for the only time this chapter?" Applejack took a deep breath and put a front hoof down on the piano. Days later, Twilight hammered the last piece of wood into place. "Here we are. The sand ship is ready for sailing." I'm going to call it Frank, Lyra said. Lyra, why Frank? Lyra looked nervous. I just think it sounds like a good ship name, that's all. It's the name of a legendary human you read about in your studies, isn't it? Yes? We're not calling it Frank. Oh, come on, Lyra pleaded. Let me name the ship after a human. Frank, Gerald, Sammy, Sun Tzu, please. No, Twilight said, rolling her eyes. Let's call it the Sandwinder. That's overly literal. We're ponies, Lyra, Twilight responded. It's how we name things. Lyra muttered under her breath as Twilight stepped back and examined the Sandwinder. It was essentially a boat with a large corkscrew in the back, designed to push ponies across the nearly liquid sands of the desert of shifting sands. There was no sail, because the only wind on the desert consisted of the ground-produced sand torrents that made flying over the desert such a tricky proposition. Twilight could see in the distance, one of them, a swirling mess of sand that would shred almost anything that came in contact with it. The Sandwinder was designed to protect against this. The occupants would hide inside the ship, safe from the sand, while the thick wood walls would absorb the damage. At least in theory. Twilight didn't really have much information to work with. She hoped that it would work. The two mares suddenly felt a large presence beside them. They turned their heads to see a large black alicorn with a mane of stars standing next to them. Queen Luna? Twilight said, jaw dropping. Well, what are you doing here? Luna didn't turn her helmeted head, nor did she make any response, suggesting that she'd even heard Twilight. She simply stared right over the desert of shifting sands, appearing to be in deep thought. Queen? Twilight asked again. This time Luna did respond, but she didn't even glance in Twilight's direction. She spread her great wings and leapt into the air, summoning her magic around herself. In a flash, she became one with the stars and bolted across the desert of shifting sands, leaving a trail of cosmic dust behind her. Oh, come on, Lyra said. How come we don't get fancy flying warp magic? Twilight didn't respond to this. Something's wrong, she said. Something's very wrong. You know, Twilight did name the fire ship. She renamed it the Celestia. That's naming it after a famous person, or someone she was close to. I'm honestly not sure in this version. I don't know how close her relationship with Celestia was. But either way, it's same basic concept as Lyra wanted to do, except with a person they specifically knew rather than someone who may or may not have existed thousands of years ago. But it's definitely closer to that than naming it what it does. Although the fire ship, back when it was just that, it was closer to that. Also, I throw my idea of a name in it instead of Frank, Frederick. Because of my sisters, they have taught me of Frederick. Frederick the Great. Feel free to look him up. Anyway, yes, something does appear to be wrong with Queen Luna. Foreboding. Anyway, I hope to see you next time, and I hope you had a pleasant time listening. Goodbye, everyone. Have a pleasant day.